Welcome into this new podcast episode. Today, I'm talking to Elise Buckle. Welcome, Elise.
Hello, welcome. Nice to meet you, Erno.
We didn't actually meet at Co, but I first saw you at Co when you were talking in the forum at the track about climate change, about climate. So I ask you to have like a conversation about it, and because this is a topic that you speak about a lot, and also about other topics that I've read about the work that you do. To give people like a bit of idea what you do now, because you have founded your organization. You have done so many things. I've been going through your LinkedIn profile. You have so many experiences, but you have founded the climate bridges. What is it? Because there's a lot of items below that you initiatives that you do there, but what is it that you do on climate bridges?
Yes, so we started Climate Bridges in 2020, initially as a network for climate and sustainability. Our DNA is what we call radical collaboration. We started this actually, I was just on my way back from Australia, where we had a family reunion. My sister-in-law lives there. And I was so shocked by the climate emergency. If you remember, December 2019, this is when Australia faced the massive bushfire. Many fires around the country that destroyed a lot of houses, but also ecosystem forests, and a lot of animals also were killed. And it was so devastating to see that, the scale of the devastation. It was also a shock for my two children, I must say, because they just couldn't understand how come, we are facing this climate emergency, but people in Australia were some decision makers still investing in coal power plants and also driving four-wheel drives. And so it was, I think my children as well were really pointing the finger on the hot button issue is what is it that we're not acting more efficiently and faster on this issue. So at the time, I was working at the United Nations, and I decided to start up a more agile organization, never with the ambition of growing a huge organization, but more to have a small and efficient team to be serving the collective goods, to be working as facilitators, as catalysts, to bring people together, people and organizations that share the same sense of urgency, that want to work on climate change faster and together. And the idea of radical collaboration is that we're stronger together. And also, if we are able to go beyond our egos and logos and to catalyze these big partnerships and global alliances, we can really unlock the power of collective action. So this is what we've done with the Planetary Emergency Partnership, with the Nature Positive Recovery Initiative in Europe, and then with She Changes Climate, which we are now rebranding as She Builds Bridges, and I can explain you why. And also with quite a strong focus on our ecosystem of climate leaders who are based around here at the Genève International, the diplomatic network based at the UN in Geneva. So it's been quite a journey to be an entrepreneur, and I've also been an elected politician during that time, and I've also worked with the UN as well. So I have several hats indeed, and I also teach sustainability and entrepreneurship twice a year at the Glion Institute of Excellence in Hospitality. And so I guess I have now a portfolio career, and because I'm so curious, and I wish my days were 48 hours long. And as I shared with you before, I also love running in the mountains. So I always want to keep a good work-life balance. And I think it's so important to stay connected to nature and to the people we love as well.
Yeah, I think, we could probably talk about running for a long time. And I saw your post about your race that you did in the mountains, and you finished. It's really high up, but the smile on your face was really clear. But also, what you wrote with that post is about the connection with nature you experience while you run in your areas. Well, I have I have no mountains in my area, but I still have a lot of forest and nature. So I have the same feeling. I love running, not using headphones, not listening to music, just being in the run and watch around and see, do I see birds? Do I see animals? What do I experience during the run? Because I think exactly what you say, it's really important to have this balance there.
Yes, and I think a lot of women, but also men, go through these midlife crises. And I think at that time in particular, it's so important to reconnect with our source of energy, with our roots. And in my case, it was reconnecting with nature. I grew up in the countryside in a small village in France, in the Alps. And I think when I think back, this is also probably where I source my energy, my passion for climate, for nature, for people and the planet. And yes, when I run, I think running in the mountains is one of the best schools of life for humility, for courage, for resilience. Obviously, when you run in big mountains, you realize as human beings we are so small. And also, the mountains are changing quickly because of climate change. The glaciers are melting, and it puts a perspective also on the power of nature and the fact also that as human beings, because of the way society works right now, we are changing the climate, we are changing geology. And that's why we talk about the Anthropocene, where human beings are actually changing almost the shape of the planet and all these mountains and glaciers and the ice melting also at the pole. And so I think, yes, running in nature is always a source of inspiration to reconnect to the root. And I think nature is also essential to humanity. Sometimes we think that as human beings, we can address climate change like just by scaling up technology and finance. But actually, I think the climate crisis is also a civilization crisis, and we need to probably reconnect to our deep values, which and putting nature and people back at the heart of society, back at the heart of the economy is very, very important to address these systemic crises because it's what we call a polycrisis. It's about climate change, but it's also about social inequalities. It's also about mental health, nature. It's all connected. And for example, by reconnecting to our deep values, what has to be valued in society. I think that in that way we can also value what really counts. For example, the care economy. So this is, for example, so many women who work for taking care of the well-being of people and nature. And this is totally undervalued in our society right now, which is so focused on short-term profit. So yes, nature is always a source of inspiration. And sometimes if I get lost and I'm like, okay, what am I doing? Why am I working so hard? I go for a run in nature and I come back and I'm like, okay, now I know why I do this work.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question about that later because I have something in my mind. But first, I want to come back what you mentioned about changing the name of She Bridges, right? So, can you
Mhm.
explain a bit why you changed? Because I didn't see that now.
Yes, so this is the result of a long-term thinking and also a strategic decision that we have taken with our board. We realized that in a way, if we focus only on like she changes climate, a lot of men feel excluded from it. And so having a pure feminist approach is actually not really working. And so we thought that by talking about she builds bridges, he builds bridges, like the two of us, and together we build bridges for climate and sustainability, it's actually more inclusive because it's really about mobilizing 100% of the potential of society. And it shouldn't be just men or just women separately, it should be all of us together. And there's a lot of science showing that the teams that perform better are the ones that include men and women together. And I think that's very important to bridge, to go beyond the gender divide actually, and to go beyond the north-south divide, to go beyond these stories of it's us against them or them against us. And I really like the framing also of this spiritual leader, Thich Nhat Hanh. Maybe you know him. He's a Buddhist monk who wrote many, many books about Zen Buddhism. And there's one in particular that's called Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet.
Hmm.
And it's really about all of us working as one team for one planet. And I think that it's very important to nurture this narrative of all of us being as one family. And that means really building bridges with people that we may think are different from us, but actually we all have the same DNA. We are all human beings. We are all born on the same planet Earth, and we will probably die also on the same planet Earth. And so I really wanted to reconnect to that as well. Again, it's also the source of reconnecting to our shared humanity is essential to address the climate crisis. Because what I notice right now is it's quite polarized, where obviously the Me Too movement was essential for women to defend their rights at work, but it has created a lot of polarization between men and women. And in the climate space, there's also a lot of division right now between the North and the South.
Hmm.
And I think that's what we need right now in our world of polarity, in a world that is more and more fragmented. You know, if you look also at the war between Ukraine and Russia, between Palestine and Israel, we need to rebuild these bridges of compassion, of reconnecting to our shared humanity, to be together and not building divides or walls between us and them. So it's about all of us together, basically.
I I'm speechless a bit right now because I think also it's a very strong position to have like she uh, for climate, right? Woman for climate, because it also I think it makes it also easy for a woman to just connect and to find like a space where they can safely connect. But I understand what you're saying. I'm also understanding that it is important that we include everybody and that we don't talk about exclusion or, making a divide. Um, what I really liked about the forum in Cove, where we both were in the track about peace, was the forgiveness part, right? So the how we should be able to forgive others, even if they have done like horrible things to family or friends. And it really moved me to see how it is possible to ask for forgiveness and to also to give forgiveness for these well things that have been done to you. And with you mentioned the wars going on. I think it is specifically very important to teach like forgiving and to learn about forgiving so that we can also move forward after the war is over or after there's some kind of like peace moment or at least like a moment of silencing the guns and weapons so that we have a moment to see how we can change the trajectory or the direction of this. And the same, of course, is like you mentioned, like with between women and men, between North and South, that we are able to let go of a past and give forgiveness, ask for forgiveness, so that we can move on and, like you mentioned, building those bridges again.
Yes, you're right. And I think, we will continue to grow our ecosystem of women leaders with She Builds Bridges because there is a need of support, of sisterhood between women because a lot of women have been hurt at the workplace, in their families, for many reasons. So we still nurture this kind of circle of trust where we have only women together because it really helps sometimes to help each other, especially for women who have to process some kind of trauma. But then you're right that in any kind of story where you have some people who have used their power position or their domination and others have been suffering, you need this healing to happen on both sides. And that's where hosting an open dialogue is very, very important. And as you say, it takes a lot of courage
Mm.
to say sorry, to apologize, and also to forgive on the other side. So it takes both sides to walk through that path. And you're right, it's so important. And sometimes it can take years. If you look at what happened even in Argentina, and I have some experience also from Chile, but also everybody knows about the apartheid reconciliation commission that was started by Desmond Tutu. This can take a lot of time. And I'm sure that in the case of Israel and Palestine, there will need to be a commission on truth and reconciliation. And maybe that will take years. But this is the only way you can build a peace that can be sustainable, that can last in through the time. Otherwise, you have this constant circle of violence coming back. So to have peace, really, you need both sides to say sorry, to recognize, to heal, and also to, in a way, you need both sides to be ready to hug each other
Mm.
and to come back to that place of shared humanity. Say, now we want to live together. We are brothers and sisters. We are part of the same family. And we want to also learn to love each other again instead of hating each other. So that takes a lot of courage. And I'm really, really happy because now we have appointed a co-president on the Climate Bridges board. Her name is Karima Kadawi. She's from Morocco. And she's also the founder of a foundation called the Tamkin Community, which is about rehumanizing society. And it's exactly about that. It's about how you bring peace to schools, to society, but also to international negotiations. That's really what's needed right now in the world, I feel, this mindset. And it's true that it's often women who take the lead on that. Not always, but there's also a lot of research showing that, for example, for peace talks, the World Economic Forum had published a study that a peace truce has 63% more chance of lasting over the years when you have women at the table. And
Mm.
it's the same in climate negotiations. When you have women at the table, that was the case for the Paris Agreement with Christiana Figueres and Laurence Tubiana, you have a better chance of succeeding. And again, this is not to say that men should not be in the room. Of course, we need men and women together because I also think sometimes if it's only women, it doesn't work as at all either. You have some other issues emerging. But you have now these really crazy situation where obviously if you look at these images of potential peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, well, now they're not really talking to each other, but at the start you could see images and it was only military men around the table, not a single woman. So that's something that has to change. Climate negotiation, there's been some progress, but there's still a huge gender gap in climate negotiations, especially at the very top. Since COP1 in 1995, when Angela Merkel was COP president, there has only been 5 women as COP president of the climate negotiations, and only 20% of the heads of delegations are women.
Mm.
So every time you have a space of power, of media attention, of money, it is more dominated by men. It's also, our responsibility as women to gain some self-confidence to say, yes, I can be there. My voice will count. To be a bit pushy sometimes, to be at the table and also to have the courage to speak and to insist that our voices have to be heard. It's not because sometimes you can talk, but nobody is listening to you. So it's not easy. If you look at the G20 summits, I mean, how many women do you have in the room? So few are heads of states. And so in this kind of male-dominated decision-making spaces, it's not so easy for women when they are a minority to be heard, to be respected, and to be taken seriously. And this is why I think that supporting women leadership is still very, very important. But it works even better when men are helping,
Yes.
when men are here at the table, and when men are the ones pulling the chair and say, "You are welcome, please join."
Yes.
So we need to work as a team, really.
Yes.
That's our message.
Yes. That's that's the exact reason why since last year, July, I am inviting just women to this podcast because I think this is for me pulling the chair back and saying, okay, just come here and talk and spread your message, even if you're a bit scared. We have this small environment. The two of us have this small conversation, and I can send it into the world with the podcast and share it with YouTube, and so that more people can see it and listen to your story. I think it's really, really important to do this. And I agree. It
Thank
is.
you. So hats off to you.
No, but that's not why I'm saying this, because I think it's really, really important. What you mentioned is that men do this, that it's not just a job for women, it's also a really important job for men, because we have seen, like you mentioned, the research is there. There is proof that if we have like a more balanced gender on the table, the results, or in the board, or like in the directors, or in your C-suite, anywhere that you look, anywhere that make decisions, whereas more equality, there is a better solutions, there is more profit, there's more revenue, there is more results, there is longer lasting results. So it is better always. So why are we not doing this, right? So I think it's the same feeling what you mentioned with your children in Australia. When you see the devastation and you don't understand why people are still not taking action.
Yes,
So
and I think it takes courage to
yes,
change.
yes.
It's always easier to stay with the statu quo. It takes courage, especially when it's radical systemic change. And I think what is important as well is to say it cannot only be individuals, because I also hear that a lot in the climate space, that people have to make more effort. And of course, we need to avoid flying around the world and fly only when we really need it, and reduce meat consumption and switch to plant-based food and do all these lifestyle changes that are very important, insulate our houses when we can do it. But it's also a question of the system around us. And that's where you need very strong public policies, and you need strong climate leaders elected as heads of states and ministers and all of that, to make the investment in the infrastructures, to make sure people actually have a choice, that they can find a train to get around. And, that's such a big issue in the US, where you can't move around unless you have a car. And on that front, I must say I'm so proud of being a European, because now we have the choice. We can go almost everywhere by train, by public transport, by bike. Look at what Anne Hidalgo has done in Paris. It's amazing now. Paris has changed so much. You can walk and bike everywhere. But for that, you need public policies to put the incentives around us to make our life carbon free, and also to improve the quality of life. And you need political will for that, bold leadership. So a mayor like Anne Hidalgo in Paris. And of course, you need also the money and the investment. And quite a lot of the times you need public-private partnerships, because the private sector has so much money to invest. So you need the economic incentives also for the private sector to invest in renewable energy, in new technology, in low carbon transport. So it's all systemic, because obviously you also need education. It's so important that children learn about climate change at school. And that's why, I also teach, and we do some workshops in schools, and we do mentoring, because sometimes we are also in our climate bubble and we don't realize that actually the first thing is to make this information available, that the young generation in particular has the right to know that we are facing a climate emergency. This is the first piece of information about climate science. They have the right to know, and once they know, they will act. I can tell you this is happening already in many schools, in many universities. So I think education, public education, is also very, very important. So anyway, we could continue the conversation
Yeah.
for hours, but because it's systemic, it's basically every part of society has to factor in climate change as the new reality. And it's possible, even if you can think it's such a big tragedy, and you can become very depressed and say, oh, this is too late. We're already at 1.5 degrees this year. Imagine this year we are hitting the Paris Agreement target already. So it's easy to just give up and say, I check out. Or, I mean, a lot of people also start to deny climate science because it's almost too much. So it's easier to go on the social media and look for some kind of information saying climate change is not happening, it's a hoax, almost as a psychological protection to say, no, no, this is not happening. So there are many different reactions, but I think that the best reaction really is to turn this climate grief into optimism. And that's where we're so aligned with people like Christiana Figueres. We need to turn this all this mud and all this pain and all this suffering into positive energy for action. There's no other way, and we have to act for future generations. We can't give up. We have to act for our children, our grandchildren, for the next generations.
I was going to ask you this question, so you just answered my question on this part, because I think it is, if you are like you, working in the forefront on this field and learn a lot about climate change, you're in the COP meetings, you're in the United Nations, so you hear a lot about these topics. That it is, I think it is easy to become like negative or believing it won't happen. But do you have somehow this faith that we can change it? Not the faith that it will just be all right. No, you have the faith that we can do the right things to make a change. And I really like that.
Yes, I do. And I've been to COP since 2005, so almost 20 years now. So I've been to almost every COP except when I had my babies. And actually quite a few times I thought about giving up, especially after Copenhagen. If you remember that COP, it was a disaster. But actually, it's because we had Copenhagen that we had Paris. Christiana Figueres came in after Copenhagen, and everybody was so disillusioned and wanted to give up and thought we could never have a climate agreement. But I think based on the lessons from Copenhagen, actually what she did was building bridges between the North and the South. Between the people on the outside, the activists, and the people on the inside, the diplomats, the ministers, and the ambassadors. And for Paris, it was very special because a very unique moment in history where all the stars were aligned politically as well. We had President Obama in the US, luckily not Trump, Dilma Rousseff in Brazil, not Bolsonaro. Russia was not so active on the topic, and very strong leadership in Europe, in Africa, everywhere around the world. So there was a strong alignment in terms of the political side. For the corporate sector, there was a big shift also that with the Women Business Coalition, large corporations understood that they had to actually ask for stronger climate legislations so that also governments around the world could align and level off the playing field. And it's clear that there's no job on a dead planet, there's no innovation, there's no business on a dead planet. The spiritual leaders came together as well, all religions, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, all the religious leaders were there together, civil society. So there was a very strong unity in Paris, and something I had never seen before, and it was so magic. I will always remember that moment when the Paris Agreement was adopted in Paris. It was very, very special. And you know what made it special is obviously people like Christiana Figueres or Laurence Toubiana building bridges between everybody, but also because people connected to their shared humanity. Paris was really about that. And if you remember, it was about 1 month after a terrorist attack. And I think actually that helped because you had also leaders from the Middle East, from even oil producing countries that shared some solidarity messages with France and with Europe in general to say we are together for democracy, for human rights, and for this shared humanity. And we are together as one family for one planet. So it was really beautiful. Obviously, after that, you had the Trump election, the US pulling out, many challenges. Now the world is also a bit more fragmented. But the good news is change is happening. For example, solar energy has never been as cheap as today. So renewable energy, there's such a big boom. Many countries have been phasing out coal. There's still a lot of natural gas as a transition, but change is happening quickly. The only question I have, I must say, to be very honest with you, is the change happening fast enough? So are we as human beings, as human society, are we changing fast enough to catch up with the changes that are happening already in the physical world? Because what's happening right now is that climate change is accelerating. It's faster than anything the IPCC scientists had predicted. It's exponential. So we are going beyond 1.5 degrees already by the end of the year. So it means we have to change even faster in terms of low carbon economy, mitigation, reducing emissions, phasing out fossil fuels, investing in renewable energy, but also financing adaptation and resilience in the most vulnerable countries, because they are really paying a high price right now. The most vulnerable people, especially, it's been a devastating year. This El Nino effect has caused a lot of floods in parts of the world, but also drought in other parts. A lot of people die, and a lot of people die and suffer, and sometimes in silence, because a lot of these weather-related events are what we call the slow onset events, like drought. It's not something that you see in the news. It doesn't happen overnight. So I'm very, I want to be optimistic, but I'm also very realistic about where we are right now. The good news is we
Hold on,
have all the
hold on.
solutions.
I have one
Yes.
question here. If your son or daughter asks you today, do you think that we will be able to change this? What will be your answer today?
Yeah, I think that climate change is happening. It's a reality. We can't change that. And even if we stop emitting carbon today, even if we stop everything, like almost what happened during COVID-19, climate change will still happen because there's so much carbon already up there in the atmosphere, coming from industrial countries, but not only, now also China, Brazil, India, all the emerging economies. So it is happening, but we still need to act, because every degree, every 0.1 degree of temperature increase matters. Every small action matters. The more we do, and the better the world will be. If we don't act at all, if we don't change anything, we're going to get to plus 3 or 4 degrees of temperature increase, and it's going to be devastating. So I prefer a world of 1.5 or 2 degree of temperature increase than something closer to 4 or 5 degree of temperature increase. So this is why we have to continue acting. Everything we do in terms of carbon emission reduction is important. And also everything we do in terms of resilience, in terms of preparing ourselves. And so what I tell my children is also that it's going to be tough. They will need to adapt a lot. They will need to be very flexible. And that's something we have to do now as well, is we also need to accept that maybe we will have less, and that we'll need to live a lifestyle that's more simple, but actually also maybe closer to nature. We don't need to buy all that stuff all the time. We are enough, we can be happy with a lot less. And also we'll need to be resilient and to show solidarity with each other, because nobody is immune to climate change. Obviously, the people who are born in rich countries are most likely going to do better. There are people who have more privileges than others. If you are born in a refugee camp in Sudan, it's going to be really, really hard. But I always say also that nobody is immune to climate change. You saw that when COVID-19 hit around the world, nobody was immune to it. And the big change was when people showed solidarity in their city, in their families, in their neighborhoods. When people help each other, as a society, we are more resilient. And again, we go back to this message about all of us building bridges, reconnecting to our shared humanity. This is what is going to make us much more resilient to face some of the systemic shocks which will come. Some of them are happening already. We know these forest fires, the pandemics. And so I think what I try to also give to my kids is also these values of uh, humanist values of humanity. I think is as important as transferring the technology. Of course, we need to help the future generations to build new technologies, to develop startup companies, to make all these changes. But also, I think going back again to this civilization crisis is sharing these deep values to our children is essential, actually, as a core of our resilience.
Hmm. I'm so happy I'm talking to you, but also you are just answering all my questions that I have in my head. When you talk, you answer all my questions. So I don't know what you do, how you're reading my mind, that the questions I have you already answer. I don't know how you do this. Um, if you have your company as an entrepreneur, your network, building bridges, and you are in the UN environment as a political figure, and you're not a politician, but like a political figure, I would say. Um, if you had to choose one and think about the impact that you have with the work that you do, which one would you choose?
Which one
Between like
two
UN
choices?
jobs,
Oh,
UN work, like more like political, like
I
bureaucratic
see.
maybe
I
work, or
see.
like the entrepreneur building your
Yes,
network and making all these connections like from yourself?
I see what you mean. And actually, the answer is both, because change happens through our theory of change is based on um, connecting the dots between the inside and the outside. And some of the most powerful and successful campaigns I've seen happening on, for example, on the Planetary Emergency Partnership, but also with my work with the COP23 presidency in Fiji and with She Changes Climate and now with She Builds Bridges, is actually the power of connecting the more top-down policy work, policy and advocacy work. So being able to talk to the COP presidency, to the ambassadors in Geneva, to the ministers, the ones really on the inside who are making these decisions more like in a top-down way, and connecting the larger crowds, the larger ecosystem of people and organizations we have in our networks, in terms of mobilizing. When you have this public mobilization and the media pressure, this is really when you can deliver impact. The bottom-up support, so this top-down climate policy and advocacy work, and the bottom-up support, and that creates a double squeeze. And I think, for example, this is why we have been able uh, to deliver on the COP28 decision to transition away from fossil fuels in this critical decade, because we are able to talk to Sultan El Jaber, the president of COP28, in a dialogue with Mary Robinson, and at the same time mobilize civil society, mobilize women-led networks and climate networks, um, and having our online summit featured in 60 media outlets around the world and having 12 million views in the social media. This was the bottom-up mobilization that really put pressure on COP28 president Sultan El Jaber, one of the most powerful and rich men on the planet, to deliver a decision on fossil fuels. And he was also under pressure from the fossil fuel industry to avoid any word fossil fuels in the text. But because there was this massive mobilization, and it was not just us, but us as a catalyst with many others, many other organizations, that we managed to have some impact. So I think it's actually super important to be both on the inside and on the outside.
You have answered my personal question, how I could do this, because I've always avoided like the political side of discussions and meetings, and I am leaning towards it now a bit more. But you've given me like a support, like a thread to that I can research now and see how I can do more in that part too. You have just given me great reasons to to investigate this more. So thank you for that. I have one more question before we leave, um, because um, at the event you talked about this. You have on your jacket. You have this nice dandelion
Flower.
flower, and it is a project for the woman-led global campaign to climate justice. And they have 7 demands of what they want to do and change. Why is this important to you? Because you are wearing this with pride. I can see that.
Yes, so I was part of the 30 partners who met in Bellagio last year to actually start the Dandelion campaign, which has been co-created by Hafsat Abiola, Mary Robinson, and also Pat Mitchell and Rhonda Carnegie. And this meeting was so special. We spent 3 days together, only women, only climate leaders, saying, okay, what is it that we can do about this climate crisis? And what I love about the Dandelion campaign is first that it's, as I said before, it's anchored into hope. The dandelion flower is the only flower that grows on 7 continents. It's a symbol of hope, of energy, of spring after the winter. It's a beautiful yellow color as well. And it's also a flower that, when you blow the seeds in the spring, it goes very far. And it's also multiplying itself and amplifying very quickly. And I think that's very important for us as women, climate leaders, to spread the seeds of hope for other women and especially for younger women and girls around the world. First, for them to have the information again that there is a climate crisis happening is very important to share that information, to do a lot of public communication and education, also through the media, not only at school, but also to spread the seeds of solutions and of action. And so it's a very, very powerful campaign in terms of mobilizing women and girls around the world on climate action. And what is beautiful about the Dandelion campaign is exactly what I said before, is you have women on the inside. For example, Maria Fernanda Espinosa, she's the former president of the UN General Assembly. She's now on the COP29 advising committee. So is Indu, who's also part of Dandelion. So we have, a few women like us very much on the inside of the UN system. And it's also a very big network now, a network of networks of organizations that can mobilize in terms of this public mobilization, media, social media outreach. So there's a lot of hope in it. Just like every civil society networks, it's also a struggle because I know my sisters are struggling to get enough funding, and with more resources, we could do much more. But this is also part of our ask. In Baku at COP29, climate finance is going to be at the heart of the negotiations. And we know that less than 1% of climate finance is going to women-led initiatives. So there's a huge gap, and we're going to push very hard for gender responsive climate finance to make sure more of the climate finance is going to women-led initiatives everywhere around the world, but in particular for women entrepreneurs in the global south. Because these women on the ground are the ones who can multiply the solutions in terms of nature-based solutions, in terms of resilience. It's very, very important that there's more money, more funding going to these women on the ground, especially in the global south. So that's a message we share. And obviously with Mary Robinson, and you saw that in the dialogue with Sultan Al Jaber, phasing out fossil fuels is essential. It's not enough to invest in nature-based solutions. We also need to stop polluting and to stop investing in fossil fuels. There's still, I mean, can you believe it that governments are still subsidizing the fossil fuel industry? That means our money as taxpayers, as citizens, is going to this polluting industry. So that really, really has to change. And I think there's going to be some decisions on this happening in New York first during the UN for the Summit for the Future at the UN, and then in Baku, Azerbaijan, COP29. But it will be a tough fight
Mm.
because we know Azerbaijan, just like UAE, is also relying on fossil fuels for its economy. So it's not going to be easy, but we are ready for the fight.
Is there anything that you want to add that I didn't ask you?
I just think for the people who are listening to us, I want to share once again this message of hope. Everyone can be a dandelion. Everybody can be a climate leader, I think, at any level. Even by having a conversation about climate change in your family, in your community, in your city, at your university, in your school, at your workplace. I think it's very, very important that we all talk about it and we all act on it. There are many, many things that can be done, like, for example, asking for plant-based food at the cafeteria in the school, in the university, or at the workplace. And so let's be together and don't be shy. And I think it's very important for everybody listening to us to have that trust that we are all part of the problem, but we're also part of the solution. And yes, we can really work on it again, building bridges and working as one team for one planet.
Elise, I am so happy that I asked you for this podcast and that you said yes, to have this conversation and to share your expertise, your knowledge, your insights in networks, and mentioning all these projects that you're doing. I really, really, uh, my hat's off to you of what you do. Thank you for that.
Thank you to you. Deep gratitude for what you're doing by inviting all these amazing women leaders, and keep up the good work. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.